You were told to forgive by your parents, by religion, by every self-help book ever written, by people who smiled and said, holding on to anger only hurts you. And maybe you believed them. Maybe you forgave. Maybe you kept forgiving the same person, the same wounds, the same pattern until you looked up one day and realized the forgiveness had cost you everything. Friedrich Nietzsche never told you to forgive. In fact, he believed that blind, unconditional forgiveness, the kind society rewards and celebrates, is not a virtue, it is a disease. Today, we are going to look at 7 specific acts that Nietzsche believed a person of genuine self-respect should never simply absorb and move past. Not out of bitterness, not out of revenge, but out of an unshakable commitment to who you are. Before we begin, a critical distinction. Nietzsche was not preaching hatred. He was not building a philosophy for the vindictive or the cruel. He despised small revenge just as much as he despised weak forgiveness. What he was building was a philosophy of self-sovereignty. The idea that a fully realized human being does not simply absorb whatever is done to them and call it grace. That has a name. And the name is not strength. He called it slave morality. The tendency of the weak to reframe their inability to respond as a spiritual virtue. True strength for Nietzsche looks different. It does not retaliate in pettiness, but does not pretend that what happened was acceptable. It stands straight, looks clearly at what occurred, and decides, from a position of power, not pain, what this person is now allowed to be in your life. With that in mind, here are the 7 acts. There is a difference between someone who accidentally embarrasses you and someone who chooses to diminish you in front of others. The deliberate kind is not a mistake. It is a calculated power move. Someone looked at you, decided to use the presence of an audience as a weapon, and executed. Nietzsche understood power dynamics with clinical precision. In Beyond Good and Evil, he observed that cruelty rarely announces itself as cruelty. It dresses up. It hides behind humor. I was just joking. Behind, you're so sensitive. But the laughter of the room, that was the point. Your discomfort, that was the goal. And the person who did it knew exactly what they were doing. To forgive this completely, without consequence, without change terms, is to hand them the weapon again and ask them to be more careful next time. They won't be. Nietzsche believed that your reputation, your standing in the world, is not vanity. It is the external expression of your internal value. Someone who attacks it publicly is not making a social error. They are making a statement about how much they respect your existence. Respond to that statement accordingly. Not with rage, with distance, with a quiet removal of access. Because the person who humiliates you publicly once and faces no real consequence has already started planning the second time. At some point, you trusted someone enough to show them your wound. You told them what you were afraid of, what you were ashamed of, what had broken you in the past. You gave them the map to the most undefended part of you, because that is what intimacy requires. And then, in an argument, in a moment of their frustration or their need to win, they used it. They took what you gave them in the dark and held it up in the light as a weapon. There is no act more fundamentally violating than this, because it doesn't just hurt you in the present moment, it retroactively destroys the past. It reframes every vulnerable conversation you ever had as a transaction, as intelligence they were gathering. Nietzsche had a concept he called the will to power, the fundamental drive in all living things to grow, to expand, to overcome. But he also understood its shadow, the will to dominate. The person who uses your vulnerabilities against you is not expressing strength. They are expressing terror. They have nothing real to use against you, so they reach for what you gave them willingly. This is the act of someone who is losing and knows it. The question is not whether to forgive. The question is whether to re-expose yourself. And Nietzsche's answer would be clear. The door that was used as an entrance for a weapon does not stay open, not out of punishment, out of self-preservation, out of the simple, clear-eyed recognition that you do not hand a lit match back to the person who just burned something of yours.